Welcome everyone to Keep It Classy Tech, and I'm sorry to say that this is not a easy solution for the LG black crush or near black issues. So in this chart you can see that gray line under the yellow line, which is from about 5 through 30 give or take, where it's too dark. And if you look at those numbers in the chart below, you have a target range of how bright it's supposed to be, and then you have the measured amount underneath of it, and it's just too dark in that area. And sadly to say, there is just no real universal easy fix for everyone. So in this video I'm going to show what the problem is and how you can address it, and in what types of content it's a problem, because there are things that LG has done that I think they expect users to have HDR tone mapping turned on, which mitigates this entirely. So here's what I recorded, and so hopefully it helps you at least somewhat and to understand why it's like this. Alright, so I'm going to load up a pattern that can help show the near black handling issues of the LG OLEDs, especially for 2021. This is a pattern that you can download on the AVS forum. It's called Near Black 16 to 27. And then you put on a USB drive. You could plug it into the TV directly. I have it plugged into my NVIDIA Shield. And then to play it on the NVIDIA Shield, I just have the VLC app. So if I click on this, you're going to see a bunch of little squares of different varying brightness. I'm going to have to adjust the camera to show it. Now if you do this, you're going to need to be in a very, very, very dark room. And let me pull up the pointer so you can see where I'm looking. So the camera, even with the ISO turned up all the way, does not seem to want to show what I can actually see here. So you see all these squares and how they're, this is the brightest, and it gets darker and darker as it works its way up. And then over here, you have a bright surrounding with a dark square, and then the square gets brighter as you go down. So the way this pattern works is from the bottom right all the way up to the top left, those squares or rectangles should be invisible. They should blend in with the surrounding, but you should be able to see every other stop or every other rectangle in this pattern. Again, the camera seems to be not able to pick up anything darker than this area, whereas right now I can see everything except for this top left, and then working its way all the way down here, and then down here it's brighter, but I can still make out the little tiny bit of dark gray in that rectangle, and then over here. So right now this is right, and this is because this mode that I'm on is calibrated. So now if I switch to, let's go to Expert Dark. Yeah, now the camera is having a hard time picking anything up at all, but I'm just going to point what I can, so I can see the rectangles to about here, but nothing up here and nothing over here. So this is all gone. Let me see if I can pick a different mode that's brighter. Let me go over to, let's see, even standard. So standard I actually have boosted up extra bright, so you can see the pattern again, but you can now see how the camera is not able to pick this up. But again, these couple square or rectangles, so that one's not supposed to be visible. That one should be, that one should be, that one should be. So there's 3 rectangles here going down, and one over that is not visible that should be. So that is the near black, what people call black crush or crush shadow detail. This is a pattern that shows what you should and shouldn't be able to see. So what I recommend is you get this pattern, and then you can mess around with some of the settings, as I'm going to show in this video, to try and find the spot where you can bring some of that detail back, but you don't want to overdo it. The reason that LG does this is there are some ways of viewing content on the TV that they expect you to use. So in HDR, they expect dynamic tone mapping or HDR tone mapping to be enabled or turned on. And when you do that, it raises that whole range, and then the shadow detail is fine. So there are, it becomes a very complicated situation. So in this video, I'm going to do my best to try and come up with recommendations of where and when to do what, use what, and how to mitigate this as much as possible without having to get a calibration. But if you can get a calibration, that will be the best way. And actually, as this continues to sit here, did I change the picture mode? No, it's still in standard. So as it's sitting here, and this pattern is staying on here, the third one has started to become visible, but it's still crushing that one, and that one. So, anyway, if you go into your settings, one of the common easy things you could do is go to your screen brightness and turn this up. The problem is, when you do that, you literally increase everything. Okay, you can't see. I have the ISO turned up, so you can't see the menu. But here, I just turned the screen brightness up to 61, and now you can see everything. But the problem is you can actually see the ones that you're not supposed to see. At least a little bit. But anyway, all this is just, there's no more black. It's all dark gray. So doing it that way is no good, because then you lose the point of an OLED of being able to do black. Oh, it only lasts for a couple minutes before it kicks out. So let's turn screen brightness back down. And like if you used it mildly, let's say 52, just as a easy fix, you know, you still get your blacks. Everything is raised. This is not ideal, but you can see you can see the detail that you're missing. So that is like the simplest, easiest thing is just set your screen brightness to 52, but you have raised everything that you don't need to. So again, it's an option. It's not the ideal option. Alright, so now if you go into your color settings, you go to your white balance. Let me adjust the ISO. And if you change this to 22 point, then you can adjust your signal level down. It's pretty much everything from 2.5 to around 30 that is too dark. So let's just say I start with 30. And we go to red, and let's just increase this a few clicks. Let's try 4, green by 4, and blue by 4. And then if we try that for each step, and this is for representative purposes, I wouldn't do the same values at each step. It's just a starting point. As you go higher in the range, you need less than, let's say, around 10 or 15. Okay, so now that I've raised everything from 2.5 up through 30 by 4, red, green, and blue. Let's turn this ISO back up. Let's see if we can see this now. So I can see that rectangle. I can see that one. And then the next one that we're supposed to be able to make out, I can't quite make out yet. Now, you don't want to overdo it. So I'm sure you've seen that I previously had videos up with values. The problem that ended up happening with those is they were usable on each picture mode, but when you would have peak brightness used at all, or if there was a wide variance in the OLED pixel brightness setting, then they would overshoot too much. So that's why I want to find something that's a little safer. And like right here, peak brightness is on high. So now if I turn that off, now it would need more than the 4 clicks for each, because now I can't even see that rectangle anymore. Okay, that one's kind of coming in, but this one definitely not. So we've lost a whole other line here. So when you are using the peak brightness or have your OLED brightness turned up a lot, then you don't need as much adjustment to the gain values. And this is where it becomes very difficult to try and give a value to use, and why I think it would be better if you're willing to get a pattern like this and look at content and go through each one of these steps one at a time and just try to see what looks right. Because let me go to 5 here real quick, and let me just turn this up way too high just to show. You can already, actually no, you can't. Let me adjust this again. You can see how the whole screen's going red here. So if I were to put all of these at 30, just as an example to show an extreme case of overshoot. Alright, so now we have just completely messed up this entire thing. So this is why you want to be careful. You want to make sure you don't overshoot, at least not by a very large margin. Otherwise you're trading one problem for another, and this is what we don't want. Alright, so I don't script my videos, so I think I lost my train of thought earlier. I think I was saying about how or why LG does this in the first place, and how, like, if you're in HDR and you have tone mapping on, then it's not an issue. If you're in game mode and you have boost mode, then it raises this and it's not an issue. Well, the other thing is, so in SDR, I have yet to find anything that will raise the shadow detail or raise this near black gamma like the HDR tone mapping or boost mode in gaming or anything else does. And I think LG's thinking is SDR content is more likely to be a lower bitrate, and when you have low bitrate content and it's a very dark area, it can look messy, grainy, blocky, whatever, especially if you're streaming that content. And so their solution is to just darken all of that area so that it turns black and you don't see those artifacts. So you may want to just keep it like this, you may not, I don't know. It depends on your way of thinking. If you agree with LG, it depends on the content you're watching, a whole lot of different things. So just to keep that in mind, LG apparently does it for a reason. So in SDR, I don't see any other real option to address this. Again, I'm just using this standard mode because it's very bright and I'm just trying to make it visible on the camera. But what I would recommend that you do for SDR is you have your ISF dark and bright and your filmmaker, cinema, like all these modes. If you set all of the settings the exact same, then they will be identical. There's no difference between them. But what I like to do is I have filmmaker set up for the SDR standard of 2.4 gamma, 100 nits, so on. ISF dark, I keep at 2.4, but I have it at about 130 nits. And then ISF bright, I have 2.2 gamma, and I have it set to about 165 nits. And this is what I would use for watching TV shows or, comedy movies or something like that, especially with a couple of lights on. And then cinema, I would do 2.2 gamma, over 200, maybe 250 nits for if you're going to really be watching something not important, maybe, news, weather, whatever, and you have all the lights on in the room that you can. Like, that's how I have some modes set up here. But when it comes to movie watching, dark room, so let's just use ISF Expert here, dark. Let's go here. So pretty much have all this left alone. And then, so what I would recommend is you get this pattern, and you also get a couple of movies that are high quality. That's the main thing you want, of some dark horror movie, something. that has very dark areas. And what you can do is adjust with this pattern first. Well, actually, no. Put in the movie, look at a couple, find that scene that has a range of very dark through something brighter and a lot of in between. So you want to pause on that scene, then switch over to the pattern, and then you want to adjust, like I said, everything from like 2.5 through 30. And you want to do very, very small adjustments. So you go over to red. I would start with like 3 and just increase everything by 3. And even if you just stopped there, that would probably be good enough because you are getting an increase and it's not going to be as bad as it was, but you're not overstepping too much. But you may end up, if you have the brightness turned up higher, then you might not need 3. You might be okay with 2. And if you have the brightness turned down and it's really dark mode, then you might need to turn this up to like 10. I can't tell you that for sure without, being there and seeing it in person and testing your own panel. So this is just a guide of how to fix your own panel yourself and actually see what's happening along the way. So anyway, so you go through and you just each one of these steps, every one of them from 2.5 to 30 by a set amount, and then you just keep an eye on this pattern in the background. Let me turn the ISO back up here, sorry. And just a reminder, you're going to start out with the same numbers all the way through the range, but as you adjust, they're going to be different in the end. You're not going to use the same all the way through. Alright, so you made your adjustments. It's looking something like this. You're able to see pretty much all the rectangles except for the top left going down to the right, to the bottom right. Every one of those rectangles through that diagonal line should not be visible. They should blend in with the background. So you've done that. Now you're going to switch over to your movie and you're going to look at the shadow detail. So then you go to your screen brightness and you just jack this up. And when you do that, it's going to show all the detail in the background. Now that does not mean everything that you see is supposed to be visible. This will make some things that are supposed to not be seen, seen. So this is just to see what's there, and then you want to back this down, and you just want to try and find that balance of what looks good, the right amount of detail that you should see, and it shouldn't glow. So like if I turn this up, you can just kind of see how even the black up here is no longer black. You don't want that. You don't want anything that should be black to glow or look gray. You want to keep that black. So then once you have seen what's in the scene that you're trying to see, if that makes sense, then you put your screen brightness back to 50, and then you can fine tune those points from 2.5 through 30 to whatever looks good. I mean, that's a kind of a hard thing to say, but it's your TV, whatever looks good. You're not paying for calibration, so just do what looks good to you. After you've done that for your SDR, for HDR, you can do the same thing. However, the values that you're going to see are much different. And again, the first thing that you could do and try out, just turn HDR tone mapping on, see if you like it. It's going to raise that shadow detail. It's going to raise the midtones. It's going to make everything appear brighter. Your average picture level is going to be brighter. It's not accurate, but if all you're worried about is seeing those details that you're missing and you like a little extra punch in your midtones, you can turn this on and your problem's pretty much solved for HDR. But now if you want to have the tone mapping turned off and have your shadow detail, when you do it in HDR, your code values are much different. And you're also, depending on the HDR or the source, these values could be even more different. Instead of 17, it could be 15. Instead of 53, it could be 50 or 35, whatever. I forget what the other numbers are, but there's two different sets of values that it could be. The thing is, you want to go from the bottom up about to around, that says 393, so pretty much around 400 and under. So that range is what you're going to be adjusting, doing pretty much the same thing, just going over to your red, your green, your blue, increase just by a few clicks, using that pattern is not going to work in HDR, so you're not going to be able to use that. You're just going to have to be able to use a dark scene in a movie or something. Again, here you can be even more conservative and just do like 2 or 3 clicks each step of the way just to brighten a little bit. Alright, so in Dolby Vision, it's just way more complicated because you really don't want to mess with stuff in Dolby Vision. It is supposed to handle everything on its own, and you have Cinema and Cinema Home. So Cinema, again, is more accurate. It's just like using HDR with the tone mapping turned off, or the dynamic tone mapping turned off. Cinema Home is like having a form of dynamic tone mapping turned on. Let's see, if I just enable that, you can see the average picture level just goes up. So that's going to increase your shadows a little bit. So if you like Cinema Home, then you don't really need to do anything. And again, even in Cinema, I don't know how much I would recommend messing with anything because it's Dolby Vision. Yeah, so you can adjust 2.5 through 30 again by a couple clicks, but I don't really want to recommend that because it's Dolby Vision, and but it's your TV. You do what you want. You do what looks right. Again, just use the more dark scenes that you can use, the better. And then you can just turn stuff up and then turn it down, turn it up, turn it down, and just keep playing with it until it looks right. Just try to keep your blacks looking black. Your near blacks should look very, very dark without any glowing or added color to them. And you want to use very clean, high quality sources. So a good Blu-ray for SDR, or some good UHD Blu-rays for HDR, Dolby Vision. Streaming content, probably not the best thing to use. So this is a long, rambly video to basically just tell you that there's no easy fix. There's calibration, which is the easy fix, but it costs a lot of money. Or you got to have the stuff and know how to do it. There's ignoring it. How much does it bother you? I know a lot of people are very bothered by it. And then there's the easy workarounds. Like I said, use Cinema Home, use HDR tone mapping on if you like those. You can increase the screen brightness by a couple clicks if you really need to, but that's kind of a last case scenario in my opinion. I would say you're probably better off having the crush than doing that. And it also depends on the type of content. In game mode, I can access Game Optimizer here. So if you're in game mode and you go to this Game Optimizer, you can adjust your black right here. And then when you have VRR enabled, you'll have fine-tuned dark areas here for even more adjustment. So it's less of an issue in game mode. Alright, I guess I'm done rambling. So I don't know how much help this video is going to be, but I just wanted to show that this is why it's taking so long to try and come up with a fix, because there just really isn't a universal fix. It's very dependent on your own panel. It's dependent on the content. It's dependent on your tastes. And it's really have to try and do a little bit of work on your own to figure out what works well for you kind of a situation. So I hope this helped somewhat. If you like this video, please just a reminder that if you press the like button, other people will be able to see it more easily. And I guess that's it. And I'll catch you in the next one. Have a good one.